Hey guys, welcome back. This is your host Phil from underKG.com, and this is the Galaxy M10. This is probably one of the cheapest offerings from Samsung. It's currently sold in some regions, including India. This is an Indian model, and here we go with a quick review on it. All right, the display is what Samsung loves to call Infinity V, but in fact, it's just a water drop notch. Anyways, it's almost bezel-less with a little exception on the chin, but then this is a $100 phone, so I can definitely let that part go. On the back, you see the dual cameras, normal and wide angle LED flash, Samsung logo, and the speaker on the back, which is definitely not my favorite place. Usually phones have their speakers on the bottom or on the side for the previous Galaxy A series. The problem with the speaker location there is that it's very easy to get blocked when you just put your phone on the floor. And also look at this glossy coating. This is one of the most uneven glossy coatings I've ever seen in, I don't know, past decade maybe. It doesn't matter, this is a $100 phone. I can't believe that a big company like Samsung letting this go through their quality control. Well, at least the phone is very slim and light considering its size. And as you'd have guessed, the phone doesn't have any weather protection. Now about this Infinity V display, it's nothing special. It's kind of low resolution with the HD+, but my problem rather is that it's a little pale. It's a little bluish tinted, and there's no option to change that. Huawei or Xiaomi always offers that option, and Samsung does that on the higher end devices, but they decided not to on this one. And also they got rid of the blue light filter. Well, they have the option hidden over at the status bar, but you can't choose the intensity or the automatic on or off time. And also the uniformity is pretty bad, especially around that notch. When you look at it from the bottom, you can see that there's a shade or a shadow protruding onto the screen from the notch on the very top panel. And one last thing, it has auto brightness, but this isn't really the ambient light sensor. This relies on the front-facing camera. It's a virtual light sensor, and the problem is that it doesn't work as it's supposed to. You let it go, you'll have to wait for a long time for it to work. And since we're talking about it, the light sensor isn't the only one missing over here. There's no orientation sensor, gyroscope, or the magnetic sensor, meaning that your maps is not gonna rotate as you rotate your phone. Now unlocking the phone, this guy doesn't have the fingerprint reader on the back nor on the front. You have to rely fully on the face recognition. When you're in a bright environment like this, it works fairly quickly. You just turn it on, give it a second, and it's unlocked. But when you're in a darker area, it's a camera, and particularly it's a cheap camera. So it struggles a lot and you're better off just punching your pin. Anyway, the chipset here isn't special either. It's Exynos 7870. That's Cortex A53 octa-core chipset with 2 gigs of RAM with 16 gigabytes of storage, or 3 gigabytes of RAM with 32 gigabytes of storage. And overall performance surprisingly isn't that bad. Just launching up the app is there, launching up another one is there, launching up a new one, it's there. It's not blazingly fast, but not bad considering the $100 price point. Maybe it's the screen resolution. Surprisingly enough, this is actually better optimization than the Galaxy M20, which has a lot better processing power. One of my few complaints is that it doesn't utilize the space very efficiently. You see on the right-hand side corner here, this is reserved for the system icons, and there's a whole lot of space over there, when there are a lot more to be displayed on that space. One of the parts that I do like is the full screen gestures. You can decide to replace the navigation buttons on the bottom to the full screen gestures, so you can just swipe on the bottom to act as a navigation bar. Now before we move on to the next part, I found out that it doesn't pick up the band 7 as it normally should. When it fails to register for a band, it should move on to the next band, B1, B3, B8, or whichever that's available, but this phone doesn't unless I put it into the airplane mode and put it back on, or I put it into 3G mode and put it back to LTE. I'm not sure if this is only my phone, but that was an issue, so just keep that in mind. Now I move into the camera department, where it's got 2 cameras, 13 and 15 megapixels. So 13 megapixels of main camera is f1.9. That's not bad for the price point, and it's fine. Sure, it does suffer in the low light, but not as bad as the older devices from Samsung. A little complaint here is that the output is way too soft for the 13 megapixel camera. Other than that, color's good, white balance is fine. It's not that shaky, I'll give it a go. Now you can switch to the wide angle camera with that little button, and this one's quite bad. Even considering the low resolution of 5 megapixels, it's got a sad level of details. And the white balance is really poor. It's almost always different to the one on the main camera. So consider the wide angle camera as an emergency measure. And with that, it's got live focus feature. This is a bokeh effect. And unlike other devices, this is software based. So you need a face. You need a human face to have the live focus effect applied. So it doesn't work on food, it doesn't work on objects, it doesn't work on your cat. When it works fine, but that's the limitation you get. Now, just like the rear camera, front facing camera also has the live focus. I do like the little bling over there on top when you switch. Anyway, the 5 megapixel camera isn't all that spectacular. It's pretty dark, it's pretty shaky, it's got horrible dynamic range. Next up is the audio department, and it's got the speaker on the back, as I mentioned earlier. The speaker surprisingly isn't all that bad. It's loud enough, its detail is not spectacular, but it's good enough for the budget phone. It's also got the headphone jack on the bottom and a lot of sound effects, including Dolby Atmos, customizable equalizer, UHQ upscaler, Tube Pro, concert hall, and adaptive sound. The wired output quality is okay. It's missing some details, but nothing deal-breaking like a hiss or the white noise. Now, where the M10 really shines is the battery. It's got 3400 milliamps battery, which might not sound like a lot when there's a 5000 milliamps of batteries around. But with the unimpressive specs and good optimization, it delivers to give me around 8.5 hours to 9 hours of screen on time, which is really good. I honestly didn't expect this much, even with the low resolution of 720p. Now, unfortunately, charging requires that much time too. It charges through a micro USB port, and it doesn't have any fast charging technology, and it's painfully slow. Half an hour is going to give you 21%, an hour for 39%, an hour and a half for 55%, 2 hours and you're still at 73, 2.5 hours for 89, and 3 hours is needed for 100%. And with that settled, here we go with the conclusion. The Galaxy M10 lacks a lot of things. It doesn't have a lot of sensors, it doesn't have the horsepower, it doesn't have the greatest camera, it doesn't have the best speaker location, it doesn't have the best finish in the world. So even at a $100 price point, I wouldn't suggest this as a daily driver. But if you're looking for a backup phone, this is gonna do just great. Especially with that battery life, it's gonna last and last and last. And with that, performance is pretty decent, camera works fine, the speaker, albeit interestingly located, is fine, and it's got a pretty good screen to body ratio. So yeah, that's the Galaxy M10. It's not gonna be your daily driver, but as a backup phone, as your work phone, as your secondary phone, this is gonna do just great. As a $100 Samsung phone, this is good. Alright, so that's the Galaxy M10. Thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, please do leave them down in the comment section below. We'll see you guys later. You can always meet us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Ciao.